Hey, it's Mike with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday, it's September 6th. This will be our chart lesson for today. We're getting a day late start due to the 3-day holiday. Hope you had a good rest and enjoyed an extra day off from trading. It's always good to get that break when you've been at this for a while. As you can see, we had a fairly bearish day. We're still oversold here. Notice we're closing inside the midline here and inside that brown line the last few trades. So I believe both of them to be correct. This does look like to be the low side of the channel here. We could just go downward to the other side and we could go across. We could rally here. We're overdue for a little correction. We're way oversold. Wouldn't surprise me if we just continue chopping lower. As I've been saying all along, this rally lasted a lot longer than I would have expected. But as I was telling you all along, I expected a retest to the low, and now we've got that. We have prices now attempting to make that retest. Now they may not be successful. We could find a bottom sooner than rather than later, and things change. But as of now, I see no reason to look for any changes here. I still expect we're going to make a new low before this is over. We may make a lot of new lows before this thing is over, but at the very least, I still expect a new low here. So anyway, let's flip over to the 2,000 tick chart. And you can see we had the big sell-off earlier, and then the rest of the day was just kind of a range day, and we closed off the lows a good bit. You can see there, but it's still a very bearish day. So anyway, let's flip over to the other chart. Okay, as you can see, we had the big sell-off here, and we rallied hard, and we really got to close outside a little further up here, and it looks like we made a new low, and then we rallied here, and we got to close out of this one. Couldn't even make a new high, and that would lead you to believe we're going to sell off pretty strong, fairly strongly. Um, you can see we had a couple of legs down here. Didn't quite get two measured legs, but it was close. And then we just kind of chopped around inside that last leg for the rest of the day until we closed. So the market just can't find any. This was a pretty good rally, but no surprise that we rallied some here because we're extremely oversold. And we're probably going to see a lot of this. Even if the market continues lower, we're probably going to have days where it rockets up real fast and hard, even if it's only temporary like it was today. That's just to be expected. And some of the worst bear markets, you can have some super rallies that really look high momentum, look like they have a lot of momentum. And it's usually just short covering, people taking profits, and maybe people trying to pick bottoms. And then the next thing you know, that rally will kind of fade out, and next thing you know, we're rocketing lower again. So, but there's a look at it. Let's zoom in, go through the trades. This was a pretty nice trend here. We got several entries here, but we didn't get a lot of quick, easy entries here, unfortunately. There's a second entry here, but right at the key entry point, that's where you get somewhat of a close outside. But the signal bar is not good enough to take a short there, in my opinion. And the bottom falls out again, and you just really didn't get a lot of you didn't get any second entries on that. You know, it's just kind of sad that we didn't get for a better trend, that we didn't get some better setups than that. But that's the way it goes. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and sometimes you just get better setups. We had a new high here right at or right before 7 o'clock. Then we tried to go higher once, twice, and that's a failed second entry long, but I think that's just too congested. But then we made this next leg down. So really you got a leg down, two legs up, and another leg down. So that on a larger picture would be a second entry. And so this is just like a little, and this is a little congestion area. So this is like a little breakout pullback. It's a the way I looked at this, it's a breakout pullback. It's a lower high. And if you understand the movement of twos, you could argue too that this was a failed second entry long. But really it's just a breakout pullback short. A lower high off of this double top here. It's a very small bar. It's only like 9 ticks. So it's a chance to enter with relatively low risk when you know this trend line's in play. And so I like that trade. And if you take this one trade, maybe the only trade you need today, because it does get a runner most likely. It depends on how you played it, really. But we drop on down, then we bounce, and we turn down again. Unfortunately, it's just a first entry. This was a second entry, but not a very good signal bar. You couldn't really use this. But then you get a third attempt to go higher, so it's a failed, or a second attempt, I guess I should say. It's third counting the high. But so and now you got a fairly bearish bar too. But that's a failed second entry long, so that's a nice place to go short. This looked almost like a repeat pattern. But the problem is a double bottom here, and there's not any room there to get out. So it's not really like a little breakout pullback like this one. Even though it looks similar, acts a little similar, it's not really the same setup. So, but we drop on down, then we just kind of work sideways back to the trend line. And this is really, we try to go higher once, twice, three times. That's a triple test right at the key entry point. It broke higher and turned down, so we probably got them trapped. I'm surprised it didn't rocket down a lot faster than that. Maybe they didn't fool a lot of people there, but I still think you have to take that trade on that big bearish bar. And you could have entered it on the engulfing bar when it went past this bar by one tick. If you didn't, there's not a whole lot of room to that low, so that's a little something to be concerned about. But in this bearish market and this, trending down right off the key entry point and the EMA together, I'm going to take that trade every time probably. And then it turns out to be a pretty good move, and then we bounce right back to we get the close outside. It's not real convincing, so I wasn't sure at that point, but I think you have to count that. That's obviously, it might have closed a little higher on some of his chart, but unfortunately that bar is just too bullish to go short, and it's a shame because look at it go. Boom, bottom just falls out. You don't get another chance to enter, then we're just kind of going sideways and chopping lower. And then we get another close outside, and we can't even make another new low, and it's off to the races here. Again, I don't think you want to be picking longs yet, but notice we came back here, and you get a first entry and a second entry, and you got this little channel working up. You get a close outside and a move to a new high, all pretty much in one bar. The key here is if you have enough room to get out, so you might have to let it break lower and drop a limit order, and I know this one would have worked. You may take that trade anyway, as bearish as this is, but the key to me, what I like to see is that you got enough room to get out here with 4 ticks or your scalp or whatever you're scalping for. And if you do, take that trade. It drops on down. Then we're just kind of chopping sideways here. I didn't see anything else I really liked. And then suddenly we bottom out and bounce. Again, I don't think you want to be picking trying to pick any bottoms here. So you run up, you close outside new high, and I didn't draw this one. It's a little convoluted here, but you got a little channel coming back, and you get a close outside a new low. Now there is a second entry here. The problem is, if you waited to this close and took that, you got to go short right into those lows, and it looks a little congested there, which you can see. So that's my problem with that trade. If you took it, especially if you took it when the problem is you can't take it when it breaks by this bar, because that would mean you'd be using this for the signal bar, and it's not bearish enough. This one obviously is plenty bearish, but you got to go short right into those lows, and it could hit that and bounce and go higher. So you're expecting prices to make a new low, but I don't believe there's enough room to scalp out there between there and there. And you see it's only 5 ticks. So that's a tough one. It looks really bearish. You may get another leg down, but you may just make a new low, and that's that. And that's really what happens, and it bounces and it's going higher again. So anyway, there's actually another short-term trend channel working up through here. I didn't mark this one, but you don't really get a chance to trade it. And you get the close outside, and you got a second entry long right there. I don't think I would take that. I mean, that doesn't. It's more sideways, I think, than it is 2 legs. But when we make the triple test and it breaks lower first and turns up, take that trade. I don't know if I'd wait till this closed and go long above it. But when this broke lower and turned up and went past it, I like that for a triple test and just enter on that engulfing bar. And then a few minutes later, you get a higher low when it breaks low here and comes back up. But the problem is you got a lot of resistance across there, and you got to go long right into that resistance. I marked it, but it's a little, it's not the best setup ever. But if you took it, I probably wouldn't beat you up too bad on it. And you actually could argue there's a failed second entry short here, but this just looks like, I mean, this doesn't even look like a leg. This looks like a leg up, a correction. So I think your second entry's up here somewhere. And by that time, you've broken lower again. And I don't think you want to take that as a failure. There's another second entry here. But again, you've got a channel working down. And you get a close outside, and you've already got a new low right there. And then you turn up on that second entry. But look how congested that is, and you're below the EMA. And then you just notice how you just keep chopping around. Now, there is a higher low here. If it wasn't for that congestion, I'd say take that trade. But with all that congestion, I'd wait and see if it doesn't come push a little higher and then come back and give you a failure. Because technically, we should be coming back to here. And it's kind of odd that we're bouncing here. And you can see we did go higher, but we come back to here, and then we get a break of it. We do come back here, and that's your first entry. And your second entry's here. If this would have been a good signal bar, maybe you take this hoping to go back to make a new high and at least go back to the EMA or this trend line if there is one there. You can see it turns back down, and we're making lower highs and lower lows. You finally get a close outside, a convincing close outside, and notice there's a little small channel here that works up too, and it plays out perfectly, really. You get your break, move to a new high, and it turns down. Now that is a second entry short. The problem was we already had what looks like a close outside. It's not real convincing in a new low, so we could be going higher here. This is a second entry, but it closes above the EMA. It looks kind of neutral. I just don't think it's worth taking. And then finally we get a new low. We make a double bottom. We rally. First entry, second entry. And then we try to go higher. And so there's another second entry right here, but it's below the EMA. So this is really looking sideways and flat. I don't really like it until we make the higher low here, and this breaks lower and turns up and goes out the other side. I don't know if I would take that on the engulfing bar because it looks so congested. But that's a really bullish bar with a lot of momentum. If it breaks above that, it's a really big bar though, so maybe you let it break higher and you drop a limit order and try to get a little better entry, which I think you could have. I'm not sure exactly where you could have got filled on that, but if I was going to play this, that's the way I would play it. I didn't draw the channel here. There is a channel working up. And you can see you get the break of two legs and then move to a new high, and then we're just kind of chopping sideways. It's still enough buying to keep it moving higher, but the momentum's running out, and you can see that there. But that's clearly two legs up. And now we're working down again. And you can see that one. And you get a little close outside, new low. Then we try to go higher, and we run into strong resistance right there. And notice we try to go higher once, twice. There's a triple test right there. I didn't mark that one. The key there would be, do you have enough room? So if you could let it break lower and get in with enough room to get out before that EMA, then maybe you take that one. But if you can't, when it comes back and tests it again, it gives you this big bearish bar on a second entry short, and your closes below the EMA, that's the one to take. And you can see that was a trade of the day probably. The bottom just falls out of that thing. So you easily get a runner, and you could ride this all the way down. Nice trade there. And this is moved a little bit. This should be like this right here. I believe that's how I had it originally. Maybe I did have it like that. But that should, it's hard to say that you got a convincing close outside, but I think in the end we end up running lower again. So it's really hard to say. If you had it like that, you're probably not wrong. So anyway, I don't see another entry in here regardless. Maybe you look at this as a failure here when it goes lower, but that's just so congested. I mean, it's just... Okay, I had a slight interruption there. I think we were still talking about this channel, but you get the break, first entry, second entry, clear second entry, and you might even argue there's like a triple test across there. I didn't draw it, but you can see it there. There is a triple test. So it's a triple test, second entry short. You're expecting a retest to the lows. Even if you had it drawn more like that, you still hard to say if that's a convincing close outside. So I still like that short. And then it's pretty obvious after that that there's a little channel here, or a little, not a channel, but a little range. Then you get a triple tested off the lows and a little failed break lower as well. So I like that one just to ride it back to the highs, and maybe you're probably going to make a new high because there is a little channel, trend channel working up here too. And it just kind of takes on off there. It turns out to be a pretty good trade. Originally, you're just kind of looking for a scalp out of it. Then we just kind of chop sideways. There's another little channel right here. I'm sorry, another little range. My mind is somewhere else today. I'm having a hard time. A little failed break lower, then you get a failed break higher, and then you get a little breakout pullback. And this breaks higher and turns down. I would be okay with you trading that on the engulfing bar, but because I still think we need to make a new low here, and this is played out obviously, but this is a really big bar to play the low of it, 22 ticks. I mean, if anything, maybe you let it break lower and you drop a limit order 4 or 5 ticks in and see if you can get filled. It looks like you probably could have gotten filled. Let's just look and see. I'm curious. Looks like you probably could have gotten filled. Oops, wrong spot. That was the right spot, wasn't it? So we're looking from here to here. So 6 ticks, probably 5 ticks back into that, you could have got filled. So you could have saved the whole point off of that 22 ticks or whatever. And there's a failure here, but it doesn't get back to the EMA. It's not a really good setup, and you can see it took a minute before it took off. So I don't like it. And of course, I don't see any really good entries all the way down through here. It's a shame because if you didn't enter here, you just pretty much missed this trade because there's just not many setups. And you'd be looking for that measured move based off this first leg. So drops on down, you get a close outside, and it does the same thing it did over here. It tries to rally before it finally makes a new low. And all of this is too congested. This is just a first entry. This is a second entry, but not a very good signal bar. But then you try to go higher again, and you got a failure. And look at that bearish bar. I don't know that I'd trade that one on the engulfing bar because it's already an inside bar. But when that closes that negative, just go short. As long as you got room to this little double bottom, but you got plenty there. And that turns out to be a nice trade before it bounces. And I don't think you want to trade this right into the EMA. You might say, okay, there's a range here, which there is. There's a little bit of a range. I'd probably draw it more like that right there. And so you could argue this would be a failure out here, but to go long right back in on such a big bar right into the EMA, you don't usually worry about the EMA too much on sideways stuff, but you also have these three matching highs that kind of run across there. So to me, it's a little iffy. I think you want to wait on a high or low or something, and you just never get one. It just takes off. And finally, you get a first entry, second entry on a breakout pullback. And I like that for the second entry on the breakout pullback. You can see we bounced there 1, 2. That's like the third time, too, that we bounced off the high side of what was the resistance area. So you get at least a double, if not a triple test there. And this thing takes off. That's a pretty good trade. And then again, you run up here, you're just chopping sideways. This one is very tempting. I mean, we tested that multiple times, and you're way away from the EMA, but that trend line is just right there, and we haven't tested, and so you can't go short into that. It ends up going lower, but it's just one of those trades you just don't want to be shorting. And you, even right here, there's a failure, but you got to go short right at the EMA there. It's not a good idea when you're still expecting a retest of the high. You need to get some kind of confirmed channel here. And you actually get a second entry here, and that kind of sets the trend, but you can't go short on that. And I don't know if you'd want to go short there anyway. Comes back to the trend line again, and again, you don't get a signal bar. And then you can kind of see by that time you're working sideways too. This does set the trend, but this was your signal bar, and this here you get the break, and that bar is awfully big, and you don't have much room to the lows there. We did just make a newer low, but I don't think that's good enough because sometimes it'll bounce again. I think you need something better than that. And notice it does make two legs down to a new low, and then it reverses. So it plays out as a channel, even though it's mostly sideways across there. And of course, then we get a run straight up. That's what the market does in these bear. Every time you get something plays out, you'll get another rally, and it probably won't. And a lot of times they don't last, but they got a lot of momentum to them because people start short covering. And so notice it runs up. You get a close outside new high, and then you get a lower high here. The key is, do you have enough room to get out before that EMA right there? And notice too that you made a new swing low. It's lower than that one, so that's a first entry, second entry. So I like that one, and that's a pretty good move down. And looks like you got a channel working lower here, then you get a break. There's another second entry right here, but that bar is too neutral, and then it looks like congestion. Then there's a lower high on a second entry, but the bar is too bullish, and that's going into 230, so you don't want to risk anything there. And that was pretty much it. There's another second entry here, but that's a little far, too far. If it was like right here, right at 230, I'd say, hey, maybe you take that second entry, but not there. So interesting day. There's still a good bit of trades here, but I mean, this kind of trading when you're just not trending very, you run real hard down, then you run real hard up, and then you chop around, then you run real hard down, and it's a little hard to trade. The only thing you can really do is trade these short-term trends and try to find your congestion and little ranges in there. And there weren't many second entries at all today. There's a few, but not many. So really, you have to trade the double tests and maybe some of the traps if you really want to get a lot of, if you want to trade during the whole day, because you just about have to trade it all day to find a couple of second entries in there. So it's not easy trading today. It started out like it was going to be really easy, but it didn't end up that way. So I really thought we were going to have a big trend, possibly have a big trend down. The only reason there was concern is that if you look at the daily chart, we're overdue for a correction. But that doesn't mean anything because you can be oversold or overbought for a long time, just as we saw on the upper side when we were looking for the big sell-off and it just kept going higher. Well, that's what happens um, happens in those cases. You can get way oversold and way overbought and stay there much longer than you would think you can. So anyway, there it is. 25 minutes here. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to wrap it up. Hope you had a good weekend, extended weekend. So that'll make for a short week this week, but maybe the trading will get a little better tomorrow. We'll see what it brings. But I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.